All right, we have a 10-pound brisket from Sam's. This is a prime grade brisket. I get all of my briskets from Sam's. I just find that they have the best deals out there for meat. All right, so the very first thing you want to do is trim up your brisket. You want to take off all the extra fats. If you see me taking that big fat chunk out there, a lot of people just like to shave it down, and you know, many people just say it renders down or whatever. I just like to take it completely out. I don't like all of that fat, you know, all in one spot. Next, you see me flipping it over, taking off some extra fats at the bottom. Of course, it's best to leave most of it on, so I do take a little bit off just so it can cook more even. Now you see that I have it all perfectly rounded up, trimmed up and nicely, and it gives off a nice presentation. Next, you want to go outside, clean off your smoker if you haven't already. Brush off some of those grill grates, vacuum some of the sawdust from the pellets. The pellets that I use are hickory. I find that those are the most flavorful for smoking. Now time for the fun part, seasoning the brisket. I like to use mayo as a binder. Many people may use mustard. Some people may use olive oil. You can use whatever you want. The goal of a binder is to allow the seasoning to stick to the meat. You see here I'm using salt, pepper, and garlic powder. That's really the only thing that I use. And again, I just like to use mayo because it just leaves the meat just so creamy, and it leaves a moisture texture to the meat. All right, we got her on here. Temperature set to 225. Gonna slow cook this for a few hours. Usually if I, like I said, do an overnight cook, I cook it real slow because I don't want it to cook too fast while I'm sleeping until the next morning. A lot of times if I start the day of, I will set the smoker to 250. But since this would be an overnight cook, we're gonna just keep it at 225 until tomorrow morning. All right, been about 2 hours in so far. Since I am cooking this overnight, have a bottle of beef broth here. I'm just gonna spritz it just to kind of keep it moist overnight. Like I said, normally if I'm cooking it the day of, I'll wake up super early and I will maybe spritz it once an hour, every 2 hours. But since I am doing this overnight, I am cooking this very slow. So I'm just gonna soak it real good, and then it will be fine until in the morning. Wow, look at the bark on this brisket. So it's been about 10 hours. We're gonna go inside and wrap it up. All right, brisket sitting at about 170 degrees internally. This is when the bark usually builds up its color and, you know, texture and everything. Next, you see me wrapping it in butcher paper, and then once I'm done with that, I'm actually going to set it inside of a foil boat wrapped around the brisket. This kind of keeps all the juices locked in as it cooks. And then finally, now I can insert a probe in it just to monitor the cooking since it's getting closer to being done. Looks like she's all done. Made it to about 203 internal. I like to use an extra probe just in case. You know, sometimes the PitBoss factory probe can be a little off, so I always like to double check my temperatures. Sometimes it can be, you know, 5 to 10 degrees off sometimes. So perfectly cooked. We're gonna take this off and gonna put it inside of a cooler so it can rest for an hour or two. All right, so our brisket has rested for about an hour. Like I mentioned earlier in the video here, this foil paper here is to kind of keep it inside of a boat. If you look closely, all of those juices are still stuck in here. You know, it's not required, but definitely more of a preference. So instead of all of those juices leaking out after brisket was resting, it kind of stayed tied up in here. So I'm just gonna cut this open, see what she looks like. Oh yeah, perfect part. Kind of see all of these juices here just leaking off. So let me move some of this stuff around, and I'm gonna go ahead and slice this up. Let's see. Oh wow, yeah, that's tender. Now this is what you call a tender brisket. Man, I mean, this thing just easily breaks apart.